strategic conversation, but I think JR presents a unique perspective, specifically that he worked with Cornerstone and he went and did some other stuff in the financial services world and he came back. And I think that his approach, both on the phone and he's one of the better people that I've seen over the years in uncovering assets and doing it on a consistent basis, such that people are willing to continue having and engaging in the conversation about assets. He's taken me back into a bunch of houses. He's known that there's, sometimes he's got a whole deal, sometimes he knows there's more stuff there that they haven't shared with him, but either which way, he's uncovering that opportunity, and so I think he's got something that he can offer you guys. Hopefully he takes something from it, and I appreciate him taking some time of his day to share those thoughts and ideas with you guys. So the floor is yours, man. Thanks.
So yeah, Dave and John wanted me to talk to you guys about one, like phones, and then two, how I'm uncovering assets in a house. I won't go too much into the phones just because my philosophy with phones is, one, everyone has their own style with phones, right? Just like kind of in a household, everyone has their own style. But the main thing that I take away with phones is that it's good to know your lead. And you have to have a different script for every lead. So if I see a lead that has a company, I mean, that is if I call a lead with a company that I know that they have that company, if I get them on the phone, I'm 8 out of 10 booking that appointment. And I think the reason for that is, one, I make myself sound professional, but not like a telemarketer. It's like a mix of both. Because you don't want to sound like a telemarketer, but you also don't want to be too lenient, right? You want to have like that nice flow of mix. And so what I try to do on the phone is find a problem. So let's say it's an MA lead. I'll call them up, hey, this is Justin. I'm a rep with Humana. Just calling you. I know it's beginning of the year, still end of January, but just want to see how that policy's working for you. It's going okay. Hey, did you make a switch in AEP? I did, okay. And who'd you get your annual review done with? Just asking them certain simple questions like that, having a nice little dialogue, and make it seem like I'm just checking off a few boxes with them. And by asking those questions, it'll just lead to you uncovering an issue. Well, I did have this dental thing. As soon as they give me a problem that they're having, I go right into that problem. I really don't talk about anything else. Okay, you're having trouble with your dental, tell me a little bit about it, what's going on, and have them enter that conversation with me. I'm not trying to have the appointment over the phone, but they enter that conversation with me so I can get to that household easier. So once they start having that conversation, well, hey, Miss Jones, look, I think it's gonna be better for me to put eyes on this. Why don't I come by and see you Wednesday afternoon? But all I did was just try to get them to admit to me a problem or something that's going on within their policy. That's all I'm trying to do. Now, when it comes to the blank leads or Medicare leads, I learned this actually from Fred Wadsworth. He had a great strategy with these. I don't know if some of y'all remember Fred, were around for Fred, but he was great on the phones. Fred with a blank lead, I'm not the greatest at calling blank leads and put it in booking an appointment. That's not my strong suit. But what I do is I call them and I say, hey, just doing a quick survey. Which company do you have your health insurance with? And is it a supplement or an MAPD? And most of the time, they'll answer those questions. I'll log it in the notes. And that very next week, I now have that company and what they have. And so then I just turn it into a very qualified lead. And so that's how you kind of create leads for yourself. Because like I said, I'm terrible at booking straight up Medicare.
I just learned something. Fantastic. Keep going.
I credit Fred Wadsworth for that one. But that's as simple as that for the Medicare ones.
And then you're calling them back the following week.
The following week, because they're never going to remember who you are, right? They have no clue. And then that very next week, hey, this is Justin with Humana. Saw you haven't had a review done in quite some time. Want to come out and do it? Just go right to your spiel. But really, all I'm doing with these leads is just creating some sort of problem. Whether if I don't have the information, just try to get the information, then circle back around to it the next week, identify that problem. So it's a Medicare supplement. Hey, I think you're paying too much based on my calculations and your age and your zip code. I think you'd be able to save between 30 and 50 bucks a month. If that's something you see that's worked for you, why don't I come on out, ask you a few health related questions as they require me to do so. Then I'll fill out an application and send it up the flagpole. Next thing you know, we're talking about what time I'm coming to the house. Super easy, super simple. And then with T65s, I'd say my success rate, if I get someone on the phone, is maybe 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10.
Can I stop you?
Yeah.
You just said something that's actually insane, okay? You called him back. If you think that's something that's worthwhile, I'm gonna go ahead and come out. I'm gonna ask you a few health-related questions as I'm required to, and I'll fill out an application. So not only are you booking the appointment, you're setting the expectation that you're already gonna do this. What is that, guys? He made the sale before he ever got there.
Yeah, assume the sale, right?
So when he gets there, the sale is assumed. Now he's gonna ask health-related questions, probably gonna ask some financial questions as well. So now we're doing our fact finder, and then we're gonna follow that up with a freaking application. Like, that's brilliant. Keep going, please, thank you.
And I guess like now that Dave reflected on that, I'm making myself sound like a professional with that company. Okay, and that's not out of the rule book, right? Like I'm not saying I'm directly with Humana and I'm captive with it. No, but I am making myself, just by the questions I'm asking and how I'm sounding, I'm making myself sound like I am a rep for that company. If you think that's something that's worth your while, like if you think, I'm just putting it on them, sort of thing. That's what a rep would do at that company. Hey, if you think you want this, let me know, I'll help you. Not, hey, I need to come see you, that type of thing. But that's my style, right? But with T65s, my success rate's probably like 3 to 4 out of 10. With those, I really try to be personable. I really try to make it seem like, hey, I'm the guy for Somerville that helps folks out all the time with this. Everyone knows me, you know, this and that. Like, I really just try to be personable. There's really no spiel I have with that, other than I'm just trying to connect with them. You know, I'll hop on the phone with them and I'll say, hey, John, this is Justin. I live here in Somerville, where you live, and I work locally here. And what I do for people is I help out folks who are turning 65 each year. And I saw that you had a birthday coming up this year, so I just wanted to give you a quick call. And they'll go, okay, what do you do? And then I go right into it. Something like that. But just being very personal with them, because they don't know who you are. Medicare scares them, right? They're like, and most of the time they go, well, my wife went through this 4 years ago, or my husband went through this 4 years ago. We got it figured out. Just be very personal. If they like you on the phone, they're probably going to say yes to an appointment 3 or 4 out of 10. Not everyone does it. Those are the hardest ones, but those are the best ones.
Do you mention Medicare? Don't
Yeah,
they
I say-
specifically or helping them with their retirement?
Yeah, so I mentioned Medicare, and I don't say anything about retirement. Anything on the phones, it's always going to be Medicare. That's it. I'm just trying to get in that door. That's all I'm trying to do. And so the easiest way to get in that door is the most simple thing with Medicare. But when I talk about Medicare with T65s, they always ask me, well, what do I need to know? Why do I need to meet with you? Well, there's a couple different avenues that you can go within Medicare. Why it's important for you to know that now is because when you're 65, you have full autonomy of what route you can go. Whereas when you're 70 and 5 years in, you probably will have to get health screened and go through underwriting to make a switch into a policy that you could have had 5 years ago. And so that kind of alarm bells go off in their heads like, okay, this is kind of an important decision. Maybe I should get some professional help, right? That's kind of my strategy with those. Is again, I'm just identifying the problem of, hey, this is a really important decision. You're not going to have the full autonomy you're going to have now when you're 70. So that's the problem I'm identifying there.
Do you still chase the ones that are turning 65 and not retiring?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely, because, I mean, if someone's 65 and not retiring, they can still move their 401k from that company. I'm doing it right now with Dave. Dave and I, we're moving assets from 401k where the guy still works. As long as they're over 59 and a half, they can move their assets from the company.
Well, see, this way now you're in front of them, they know who you are, so when they do retire, this is your go back.
Exactly. And, you know, I'm going to get into it here in a second, but they're not going to, if you follow the process that I follow, they're not going to just know you as the Medicare guy. Okay, they're going to know you as a financial professional. Maybe they don't necessarily know you do annuities, but they know you have something to do in the financial world. So when I step into a house, I typically just sit down with them and collaborate for 10 minutes on, you know, where they're from and just get to know them, right? Just make some simple small talk and make them feel very comfortable. And then from there, I'm going into the Medicare, you know, whatever they have. Let's say it's a Medicare supplement, all right? Check out their Medicare supplement, quote it, see what they're paying, see what they're pricing. And you know, that only takes 10 minutes, really. And I kind of already sold it on the phone, so I'm 20 minutes into the appointment. After that, that's when I'll kind of go into, hey, Ms. Jones, by the way, do you have a plan for long-term care? No? Okay. Do you have any life insurance? No, ma'am. Okay. Why are you asking me these questions? I'm just trying to complete your profile. Certain questions are kind of required for me on your profile. You know, just kind of small talk, make something up that's comfortable for you. And then I'll come back to the long-term care. I said, Ms. Jones, you mentioned you didn't have a plan for long-term care. Why is that? Why don't you have a plan? We don't think it's really that important. We don't think that we'll ever need to use it. We're in really good shape. I understand that. But I also am a numbers guy and I'm realistic. Dave mentioned this last week in the training. 70% of people need long-term care over the age of 65. So 1 out of the 2 in the household is going to need it at some point. So once you point that out, they kind of, you know, the eyebrows kind of go up a little bit. There isn't really an awareness around it yet, but I'm just kind of planting a seed. And then I'll say, let's say you did need long-term care. How do you plan on paying for that? Well, we have our 401k and we have, you know, some money in the bank, okay? Do you have any idea of what that cost looks like on a monthly basis on average? And they'll throw out a number. I always come back with $15,000 a month. Because you gotta think in 10 years from now, where's inflation? Just things like that, right? So I'm just giving them a realistic number, $15,000 a month or $150,000 a year, something like that. And that always raises their eyebrow because they're usually thinking $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a month. Nope, $15,000 a month. It always raises the eyebrow. And then say, okay, so you have those assets. You said you paid for it. Typically, people last about 2 years in long-term care. That's $300,000 on average. So if you just want the basic health coverage for long-term care, you're looking at $300,000. Okay, well we have about 700. Let's just say the number that they have is 700,000 in assets that they can pay for. Well, we could pay for it with that 700, right? So that'd leave us with about 400. I go, well, typically when you get out of that care, you probably already passed, right? Mr. Jones, you talk about using your assets to pay for it. Well, when you die, your wife doesn't have 700,000 left. She's 4. And her lifestyle is going to drastically change. And what if she needs that type of coverage someday? Is that going to be enough? Right? Especially if she's using these assets to pay for her stuff because she lost your Social Security. You're just kind of pinging things off of them, realistic scenarios and solutions, right? Realistic problems that will happen. I said, look, I really have this is how I really get into it. I said, I really have 2 problems with long-term care, just the long-term care insurance, okay? The first problem is, 1, it's really expensive. And they always go, yeah, we've looked into it, it's really expensive. And I go, 2, there's a chance that you pay those premiums for something expensive, and you may never use it. There's a chance that you just may up and pass. You never use it, and all those premiums go to waste. I said, what I'm more of a fan of, and I think what a lot of advisors are switching to, or at least gravitating to for people in the planning, is hybrid long-term care. And this is the part where it kind of makes me look really good, and it tells them that I'm not just Medicare, without telling them, hey, I do other stuff, right? So I'll draw this out for them. And I just draw it very simply. That way they can understand it, nothing like crazy. So I'll just go 250 BB, and then 250 LTC, okay? Hybrid long-term care, okay? I say, Mrs. Jones, when I say hybrid long-term care, what we're doing here is we're using a version of life insurance for long-term care, okay? So let's say you have a life insurance policy at your age, the death benefit's $250, would cost, let's say, $6,000 a year, okay? You ever heard of a rider, Ms. Jones? Maybe, I don't know. what a rider does, it's just like an accessory to a life insurance policy. It's something you can add on to it for a need. And in this sense, the need is long-term care. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add a rider of long-term care onto this policy. Now, riders cost money, so we'll say this costs us $8K a year. Okay? So your next question is gonna be, Ms. Jones, what are you talking about here, Justin? What does all this mean? Well, what I'm saying here, Ms. Jones, okay, if we have a life insurance policy that's $250,000 in death benefit, that costs us $6K a year, what we can do is, let's say that person doesn't have the assets to pay for the long-term care, right? Well, they need the assets to pay for it since they don't have it. So adding on this rider, Ms. Jones, gives you the ability to use this policy while you're still alive. So let's say at age 80, you needed long-term care and you go into a facility. This policy is gonna trigger this benefit. And let's say you needed 100K out of it. They will give you 100K while you're still alive to pay for your long-term care. But what does that do to your death benefit? Your death benefit is now 150. All they're doing is the money you use from here or there, they're just subtracting it. Does that make sense to everybody? And it'll make sense to them. It's very easy to see, right? But let's say, Ms. Jones, you do have the assets to pay for it. Well, I don't like paying for things we don't need, right? If you have $700,000, I would say that's plenty enough money to not need a long-term care rider because you can pay for it during your lifetime. So we don't need to pay this extra $8,000 a year. All we need is something to replenish the assets for when we pass and when we're done using our money to pay for the long-term care, being this death benefit. So for $6K a year, when you die, Ms. Jones, $250,000 will be there to replenish the assets in the estate you used to pay for that long-term care. She goes, huh, interesting. And so all that does is it really gets them thinking. It really gets them sort of on the topic, engaged, conversation like, hey, I don't need to go through all this long-term care stuff, and this is a simple solution. Now, I've only ever written one of these policies, right? But what it does is it enters that conversation. So from here, I go, let's talk about your 401K. How much is in there? What's it invested in? This and that. And you can just go right down the road with it. It's hard to say, what my next line is because every household is different. But from here, you just showed them problem, solution. Now let's identify how we can create that solution using your assets. And then that gets you into the money talks, gets you into the 401K talks. What questions do you guys have at this point?
You said you wrote one of those. What was the company you used?
Protected. And Matthew Go's been writing a couple of these per year. I got this feel from Matt. 2 years ago, we were in a house. This lady had like $3 million in a trust, advisor, but he saw the need. She didn't have any long-term care coverage. And he did this exact presentation, made total sense to her right there. And I'm like, I'm gonna start using that.
Guys, we also have a company by the name of One America that kind of acts as a hybrid between annuity and long-term care as well, where you can kind of take and dump one chunk of money in and it generates more long-term care benefits as well. Scott spent more time with it than I have, but that's another really unique product for a similar kind of solution. But there's lots of that stuff out there. So.
And I think also, we always talk about completing your fact finder. Man, this is gonna complete the assets. You're also gonna get to ask about their life insurance because you're gonna need to know what they have already in death benefit. Like you pretty much, if you just do this presentation for 5-10 minutes and get to do it, like if you get good at it, you're gonna complete that fact finder every time you walk in a house. Unless it's just a really, really difficult person, which no one was gonna do it anyways. But every time I walk into a house, I'm doing this and I find out everything that's in that house because of this. And you don't need to sell the annuity there. You can always come back to the office and strategize with Dave, like, hey, how do I approach this now? Or talk to me or talk to Matt or anybody. how do I approach this now? But now you actually know what's in the house and what's there to be done. Cause that's all I'm doing, I'm just finding out what's in there. I talked to Dave, hey, how do I go back to this? What would you do? Can I go back?
If I may, guys, I mean, he's obviously gotten very good at it, but there's a couple of things that I can kind of simplify and really kind of drill down on. One, he's identifying a need and or he's creating a need, okay? So like with his phone presentation, for instance, the fact that he's presenting himself as a rep for the company, there's nothing backhanded about that. If you're licensed with that carrier, you are a rep for that company, okay? It doesn't mean that you take a paycheck from them, but you are licensed to sell their product. And so if you're calling them and saying, hey, you're with Blue Cross Blue Shield, guess what? That's great, I'm a rep of Blue Cross Blue Shield, whatever, okay? So you're not tricking anybody. I want you guys to feel confident in that, but creating the need, getting them to talk about what concerns they may have experienced. Now that is a need. If somebody has a need, they're gonna look for a way to get that need met. And if that happens to be allowing Justin to come to the house, so be it. Same thing with the fact finder. We're creating a need, we're having a discussion around long-term care that they may or may not have discussed before. They may or may not have a plan in place, but if we're not having a discussion, at least if they have a plan in place, then you're probably gonna walk through all that stuff anyway, because they're gonna start explaining to you and they're gonna be proud that they've done all these things. Because I promise you, the folks that have like old school legit long-term care policies and or have put some kind of strategy together with their family, they're very proud about it. As well they should be, because a lot of these old long-term care plans are stupid good for silly cheap money compared to what you have to pay to do it today. But it's still gonna help you with your fact finding. It's still gonna, well, why did you do that? It was probably, and you can kind of lead them a little bit, you guys probably took out the long-term care policy as a means to help protecting your assets. Oh yeah, that's exactly right. Okay, well, let's talk about that a little bit. So it's still gonna offer that segue for you to continue diving deeper into the fact finder, but all of that, everything that Justin just discussed to me the entire time is just, he's creating a need. He's creating a need on the phone. He's creating a need while he's going through the appointment itself. And then showing a generic strategy so that we can take that generic and then try to make it more specific to their needs. But because he's showing them a strategy, those people are visualizing how they can use that concept in their own lives. Or maybe they're visualizing why that won't work, but it's still gonna open a conversation up for you. So I think it's just, I think you've just gotten very, very good at figuring out how to create a need, whether it be in person or on the phone.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'll tell you guys, that came back to your phone script, we used to say it all the time, was play on the pain. You know, it's not that we're trying to be cruel or mean to people, but if somebody's got something that they're unhappy with, and you're talking about it, they're gonna wanna talk about it, specifically if you're not the one that caused the problem.
Well, to Dave's point, like if they say, I have a problem with this, hey, let me come out and put eyes on it for you. Like, don't even like, if they wanna talk about it, sure, do it a little bit, but like, just get right to the point, cause they've already done your job for you and identifying the reason or problem is. That's me.
Awesome, man, I think it's fantastic. You guys have any questions for Justin?
And one last thing I wanna say, sometimes I don't even put the prices in here, I'll just say, you know, obviously these things cost money, right? And then I'll say, this costs a little bit more money, just like every accessory to your car, whatever it may be, just making analogies, right? But sometimes, you know, I found that when I put the money in there, it can like maybe give like a more of a salesy vibe rather than a, hey, an education vibe, 'cause that's what I'm doing, educating. That's what I got.
Appreciate your time, man.